She stepped in as a nanny for a day, and the millionaire dad couldn't take his eyes off her. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is now. Subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The biting chill of a Seattle winter morning wrapped around Olivia Reed as she stood before the colossal iron gates. Snow, a fresh, silent blanket, softened the edges of the manicured hedges, transforming the familiar suburbs into an ethereal world of stillness. Her breath plumed in small, fleeting clouds, a gentle, visible sigh in the cold air. A stray strand of golden hair, escaping its loose ties, danced against her cheek. She tucked it behind her ear, her heart a rapid drum against her ribs, a flutter beneath her beige coat, like a tiny trapped bird. This neighborhood, a realm of hushed tranquility filled with sprawling estates and inherent wealth, stood in stark contrast to her own modest world of kindergarten story times and finger painting. This mansion, grand and imposing, felt a million miles from the comforting chaos of a classroom. Yet her sister's panicked call, a raging fever, no one else to step in, had propelled Olivia here. Her own grief, a fresh, raw wound from her mother's recent passing, still clung to her, a constant, heavy companion. But a child needed her, even if just for a day. She'd said yes without a second thought, driven by a deep well of empathy. The gate, heavy and ornate, swung inward with a whisper of welcome. A man stood framed in the doorway, a figure of striking contrast. Tall, broad-shouldered beneath a dark sweater, he exuded an aura of contained power. His collared shirt, crisp and stark, peeked from beneath the wool. His face, sharp and defined, offered no hint of welcome, no flicker of warmth. His eyes, a cold, intense gray, locked onto hers with an unsettling stillness, like stones reflecting the winter sky. Before Olivia could utter a word, a small figure, quick and bright, peeked from behind his leg. A little girl, her wide hazel eyes, bright with a childlike innocence, widened further as they landed on Olivia. "You look like Miss Sunshine," the girl gasped, her voice a sudden, clear chime in the morning air. Olivia blinked, startled, a ripple of surprise crossing her features. I'm sorry," she murmured. The man's brow furrowed, a fleeting shadow across his sharp features. But the little girl beamed, stepping out from behind him, her small arms swinging with unbridled excitement. "I remember you," the child chirped, her voice bubbling with pure delight. "You're Miss Sunshine. You sang the brave song." A faint smile touched Olivia's lips, though confusion still softened her gaze. She knelt, her movements light and unhurried, bringing herself to the child's level. "Hi there, sweetie," she said, her voice a soft murmur, like whispers on the wind. "I'm Olivia. I'm here just for today. Your usual nanny's a bit under the weather." The girl clapped her hands once, a small burst of joy. "But you came anyway. Daddy, can she stay?" Olivia glanced up, her gaze meeting Ethan Vance's once more. This time his eyes, though still carefully guarded, held a flicker of curiosity amidst their deep intensity. A subtle current passed between them, fleeting yet potent. He finally spoke, his voice deep, carefully measured, like stones tumbling in a riverbed. "Ava, let's go inside." Olivia rose to her feet, searching his expression for any hint of welcome beyond the words. There was none, only a brief, almost imperceptible nod as he stepped aside, holding the grand door open. "Thank you," Olivia said softly, stepping into the vast entryway. It was magnificent, vaulted ceilings soaring above polished hardwood floors, an atmosphere where silence held preference over boisterous conversation, a stillness that had settled like fine dust over grand furniture. Ava skipped ahead, a tiny bright spark in the hushed space, humming a tuneless melody under her breath. Olivia turned slightly toward the man, a polite question forming on her lips. "So I suppose you're Mr. Vance?" He nodded again, this time slower, his gaze unwavering, fixed on her face. "Ethan Vance." He offered no handshake, no gesture of introduction beyond his name, his hands remaining tucked loosely into his pockets. Olivia offered a small, hopeful smile anyway, a fragile bloom in the cool air. "It's nice to meet you. I promise not to cause any trouble. I'll just keep Ava company, make lunch, and be out of your hair before dinner." Ethan's gaze hadn't left her face. It was not predatory, but rather a deep, searching look, as if he were trying to match her to a memory he couldn't quite place. His eyes flicked over her golden hair, her soft features, her slightly nervous stance. He had seen her before, not here, not like this, but in a different light, a different moment, a faint echo of a memory long held in his heart. "Miss Sunshine," Ava whispered again, her voice carrying like a ghost through the grand, silent hall as she disappeared into the living room. Ethan remained silent, his expression giving nothing away. But deep inside him, a pulse quickened, a subtle tremor beneath the calm surface. It couldn't be. Not after all this time. Not her. Not the woman he'd seen in that old preschool video. The one who had sung to his daughter when she was lost in grief after Claire's passing. He remembered the way that woman's voice had filled the auditorium, gentle and steady, how his daughter had stopped crying for the first time in weeks. He remembered how someone, some kind teacher or assistant, had crouched beside Ava and whispered something only she could hear. Later, in the parents' group chat, someone had posted a shaky video, just a snippet. A warm voice, a blonde woman singing and rocking Ava gently. No name. No way to know who she was. He had kept that video, played it when the nights grew too long, a silent comfort. And now she was standing in his foyer, holding a bag of children's books and puzzles. Olivia Reed, she had no idea. And he wasn't sure what to do with that startling truth. "I'll be in my office," Ethan said, stepping past her, his voice a low rumble, the words clipped and precise. "Ava knows her routines." Olivia nodded, a small involuntary movement. "Of course, thank you again." He paused at the grand staircase, his hand resting on the polished banister, glancing back once. She was taking off her coat, placing it neatly on the hook by the door, humming something to herself, a soft, tuneless melody. The same tune. The very same tune. His jaw tensed, a faint muscle jumping. Then he turned and walked away, the soft click of his shoes echoing down the hallway, leaving Olivia alone in the vast entryway, steeped in stillness. Olivia exhaled slowly, a long, quiet release of breath. She was here for one day. Just one. But something already told her this wasn't going to be ordinary. The quiet secret, known only to one, hung in the air, a silent promise of what was yet to unfold, like a shadow half seen in dawn's early light. Under the soft, steady hum of his office lights, Ethan Vance sat behind his mahogany desk. The walls around him, lined with books he rarely read anymore, seemed to press in, embodying the quiet, orderly existence he had built since Claire's passing. His computer screen glowed with unread emails, a testament to the world outside his immediate concern, but his eyes weren't on them. They were fixed instead on a small, silver flash drive, nestled beside his keyboard, like a forgotten secret. He reached for it slowly, his fingers tracing its cool metal, almost reverently, before plugging it into the port with a soft, decisive click. A window opened, revealing a single video file, labeled simply, "Be Brave Day." He clicked it. The screen flickered, then resolved into a familiar scene, bathed in the soft, nostalgic glow of memory. 2 years ago, a preschool auditorium, adorned with construction paper stars and hand-drawn posters, a fleeting tableau of innocent creativity. The shy, distant voices of children murmured in the background, a faint echo of forgotten play. The camera, held by an unsteady parent, scanned the room before settling, inevitably, on a tiny figure sitting alone on a bench. Ava, just 4 years old then, her dark curls tucked behind her ears, her small hands clenched in her lap. She looked utterly lost, a fragile island in a sea of innocent activity. Then another figure entered the frame, almost gliding. Olivia, her golden hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, her posture gentle yet radiating a quiet, certain confidence. She knelt beside Ava, her form blurring slightly as she whispered something the camera couldn't catch, a secret shared only between them. Ava looked up, her small face streaked with tears, her eyes wide with a fragile hope, and after a moment, she nodded. Olivia then turned to the room and in a clear, soothing voice, began to sing. It wasn't a flashy performance nor an event designed for applause. There was no background music, no grand gestures, just a simple, unadorned melody. Her voice, gentle and unwavering, filled the auditorium, weaving a lullaby about bravery, about remembering, about a love that doesn't disappear. And then she spoke the words that had echoed in Ethan's mind ever since, a quiet mantra in his darkest hours, a whisper of enduring truth. Even when someone we love is gone, they live here, every time we smile. In the video, Ava leaned her head against Olivia's shoulder, her small body no longer trembling with sobs, no longer crying. A fragile peace settled over her, a quiet miracle. Ethan paused the video, the image of Olivia and Ava frozen on the screen, a tableau of unexpected solace. For months after Claire had died, nothing had reached his daughter. No therapy, no new toys, No bedtime stories could penetrate the profound grief that had settled over her like a heavy shroud. But that day, something had shifted. A subtle, profound change. Ava had come home with a faint, tentative smile and a folded letter tucked into her backpack. A small note, written in child-friendly cursive on pink paper, with a sun drawn brightly in the corner. Dear Ava, I see how strong your heart is, even when it feels like it's breaking. Your mommy loves you from the stars. Every time you are kind or brave, you shine like her. With hugs, Miss Sunshine. There had been no last name, no title, no explanation beyond Miss Sunshine. Ethan had asked the school. They told him she was a temporary teaching intern, Olivia something. She had only been there for a few weeks, part of a college support program. They didn't have her contact information. She had moved on. That was all they could tell him. A fleeting presence, gone as quickly as she appeared. But the letter remained, tucked safely in a drawer by Ava's bed, a silent testament to a moment of unexpected grace. The video stayed on his desk, a hidden comfort he returned to on countless lonely nights. And now, 2 years later, the woman who had helped his daughter feel again, truly feel, was in his very living room, pouring juice and arranging puzzle pieces, her laughter a gentle melody drifting through the grand hall. He exhaled slowly, a long, drawn-out sigh, rubbing a hand over his face. He had recognized her immediately. The same golden hair, the same warmth in her eyes, a quiet light that seemed to banish shadows. Ava's words that morning hadn't been a coincidence. She had known. Children, he knew, don't forget the ones who hold them when they are breaking. Ethan replayed the video again, watching Olivia smile, watching Ava lean into her, a tiny, trusting gesture that spoke volumes. Olivia had no idea who he was, no idea the profound, lasting impact she had made on his shattered world. And now fate, or perhaps something more tender, a whispered thread of destiny, had brought her back, without any invitation or seeking. He thought of going to her, of stepping out of the shadows of his office and simply saying, "You changed everything for my daughter. You gave her back her smile, a gift beyond measure." But something inside him hesitated, a quiet resistance, a lingering vulnerability. He wanted to know something first, something he wasn't sure how to ask or even fully understand. If she could reach his daughter in the darkest of times, could she do the same for him? Not because of a memory, not because of a fragile letter, but because of who she was now, a presence that promised warmth. He closed the video file, the screen returning to the sterile glow of his unread emails. From the living room, a soft sound drifted through the hall. Olivia's laughter. Low, real, and healing. It was a sound that broke through the pervasive stillness of the house like a long-lost melody finding its way home, awakening echoes that had long slumbered. Ethan sat still, listening, a new truth taking root in his heart, subtly shifting his world. The truth hid in what remained unspoken. A quiet song caught in his throat, waiting for the right moment to be released, like a secret held tenderly in the silence of dawn. The morning sun had risen higher, casting golden light through the vast, unbroken windows of the Vance estate. Yet inside, the atmosphere remained in a profound hush, almost reverent, as if the grand home had long forgotten how to echo with the uninhibited sounds of joy and laughter. Olivia moved gently through the opulent space, her steps light upon the polished hardwood, taking in the details that seemed almost too perfect. The pristine white furniture, the framed modern art, the conspicuous absence of clutter, of the lived-in warmth that truly made a house a home. It was undeniably a beautiful house, a monument to wealth and refined taste, but it wasn't, not yet, a place imbued with the spirit of family, a vibrant heartbeat. But the moment she stepped into the playroom, everything shifted. Ava was already there, a tiny, self-contained world. She sat cross-legged on a rug, like a gentle cloud beneath her, a stuffed bunny tucked under one arm, its worn ears a testament to countless silent conversations, a small companion in her solitude's embrace. Ava looked up, her big hazel eyes curious but not afraid, a glimmer of the morning's earlier excitement still dancing within them, like sunlight on dew. Olivia knelt slowly, her movements unhurried, bringing herself to the child's level. "Hi again," she said, her voice a gentle murmur, like a distant lullaby. "Do you want to build something today? Or maybe we can make up a story." Ava hesitated, her small head tilted, then nodded shyly, a tiny agreement. Olivia's heart lifted, a small, tremulous flutter, like a bird taking tentative flight. She glanced around the room, her gaze falling upon a small basket overflowing with picture books. An idea, delicate and bright, bloomed in her mind. A delicate inspiration. She gathered a few of the books, their colorful covers a vibrant contrast to the muted tones of the room, then sat down beside Ava on the soft rug. What if we make a story that no one has ever heard before? Olivia mused, her fingers gently tapping her chin, a playful gesture. One that belongs just to you and me? Ava's eyes lit up, a sudden spark of genuine interest, like distant stars emerging in twilight. Let's see, Olivia began, her voice taking on the lilting cadence of a storyteller, weaving magic into the air. Once upon a time, in a kingdom hidden between the clouds and the stars, there lived a tiny, brave princess named Lila. Lila, Ava repeated, her voice barely above a whisper, a soft, almost ethereal murmur of correction. Yes, Olivia affirmed, her smile widening, a gentle acknowledgement. And Princess Lila had the most beautiful mommy in the whole world. Olivia paused, her gaze fixed on the little girl, waiting, sensing the delicate threshold they approached. Her mommy's name was Claire, Ava supplied, her breath catching slightly, a ghost of memory in her small voice carrying the weight of a name long unspoken in light. Olivia blinked, startled. She didn't know. She had no idea. The name spoken with such gentle reverence was a fragile chime in the stillness of the room, a profound coincidence. But Ava nodded slowly, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Then again, faster this time, as if confirming a deeply held secret, a truth only she carried. She had long hair like sunlight, Olivia continued, weaving the story thread by thread, drawing from the image Ava had painted with her words, connecting to a memory she didn't fully comprehend. And she used to sing to Princess Lila when the stars came out. One day her mommy had to go on a long journey, but she left something behind. Want to guess what it was? Ava leaned closer, her small body tense with anticipation. What? Her laugh, Olivia whispered, a tender secret shared between them, intimate and precious. She hid it in the wind, and every time the wind tickled the princess's cheeks, she knew her mommy was saying hello. For a beat, the room was utterly silent, suspended in the tender magic of the story, waiting, breathing. Then Ava giggled, a sound so full, so sudden, so innocent that it startled even Olivia, a pure, unadulterated joy that burst forth. Ava giggled again, clutching her bunny, her tiny shoulders shaking with unrestrained delight, a melody long absent from the house. Down the hall, just out of view from the playroom, Ethan stood leaning against the wall listening. The sound of Ava's laughter hit him like a thunderclap, a shock to the system, shattering the pervasive stillness he had grown accustomed to. It had been so long, months, maybe longer, since he'd heard his daughter laugh like that. Not a polite chuckle, not a forced reaction, but a real, genuine laugh, one that bubbled up from her belly and lit up her entire face. His hand tightened imperceptibly over his chest, a strange ache blossoming there, both painful and exquisitely tender. A truth hiding in what remained unspoken, like a song caught in the throat. Who was this woman, who could coax such pure joy from his child? Olivia stayed with Ava for hours, the morning melting into the soft gold of the afternoon, carried by the gentle rhythm of their shared play. They built towering castles from pillows, vast kingdoms with crayons, their creations sprawling across the pristine rug. They even danced, two figures twirling to old forgotten music Olivia found on the family's Bluetooth speaker. Olivia gave Ava silly voices for her dolls, braided her dark curls with nimble fingers, and listened, truly listened, when Ava spoke in half-formed sentences about the stars, about her beloved bunny, about her mom. By late afternoon, the house felt different. It breathed again, exhaling the long-held stillness. Ava ran through the halls, her bunny flying through the air, her feet light on the polished hardwood floors, a joyful echo where silence had once reigned. And Olivia, despite the weariness, sweet and soft, that settled over her, felt fuller than she had in weeks, a balm to her quiet sorrow. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and rose, Olivia helped Ava into her pajamas, soft flannel comforting against her skin. She read one last story by Ava's bedside, her voice a soothing murmur that gently lulled the little girl into the soft embrace of sleep. Ava's eyes fluttered sleepily, her breathing evening out into the gentle rhythm of childhood slumber. Ethan appeared at the door then, ever silent, a shadow in the fading light. Olivia stood, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear, a tremulous sigh escaping her lips. "Well," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper, I guess I'll be heading out. I hope she sleeps well." But before she could turn, Ava stirred, her eyes suddenly wide, fixed on Olivia. She sat up, reaching for her small arms wrapping tightly around Olivia's waist in a surprisingly strong embrace. "Can you come again tomorrow?" the little girl asked, her voice muffled against Olivia's coat, a desperate, childish plea. Olivia hesitated, surprised, her throat tightening with unexpected emotion. I'm not sure," she started, then looked at Ethan. He met her gaze. But it wasn't the cold, assessing look he had given her that morning. It wasn't guarded, nor merely curious. It was something else, something deeper. His gray eyes held a profound vulnerability, a silent plea that rippled through the still air, a shared understanding born of the rediscovered song and laughter. He nodded slowly, as if granting permission, or perhaps making a plea of his own. And in that one moment, Olivia felt it. The kind of silence that spoke louder than words. The unspoken realization that today, something had shifted. Something important. It had reshaped her view of him, like a familiar face seen anew under starlight, revealing a depth she hadn't perceived before, a fragile hope for what might unfold. The days began to blend into each other, like the seamless flow of a village stream finding its path through green fields. Mornings unfurled with the soft pad of Ava's feet in the kitchen, a light, happy skip that filled the grand space, chasing away the remnants of long, silent nights. Then Olivia's gentle humming would join, a delicate melody as she flipped pancakes shaped like golden stars, their aroma mingling with the faint scent of fresh coffee, a domestic symphony. Afternoons were filled with the rustle of turning pages, the sweet murmur of children's books, the sudden bursts of Ava's laughter, like bright birdsong, and unhurried learning moments shared on the sun-drenched porch. Evenings were slower, more tender, as the sky turned indigo and deep rose, and Olivia, with her voice a soothing balm, read to Ava, both nestled into the deep cushions of the corner couch, a picture of quiet contentment. Ethan watched it all, a silent observer from the edges of their newly softened world, taking it in. Olivia had a way of folding herself into their lives without demanding space, like a gentle vine finding its secure place on an old wall. She belonged, without even trying, her presence as natural and comforting as the turning of the seasons. The way she looked at Ava when the child laughed, her eyes brimming with a pure, unadorned joy that mirrored the very sunlight. The way she instinctively set a second cup of coffee beside him each morning, exactly how he liked it. No cream, 2 sugars, a small, noticed detail that spoke volumes of a quiet understanding. The way she filled silence, not with noise, but with a profound peace, a grace that seemed to settle over the entire house. There were moments, brief but undeniable, when their eyes would meet across the vast room, a subtle current passing between them, and something unspoken would hang in the air. Not quite love, not yet, but something tender, something real, like the first shy blossoming of spring. One Thursday evening, as the winter wind tapped a melancholic rhythm against the vast windows, a quiet shift occurred. Ava developed a fever. It started subtly, with flushed cheeks and small whimpering sounds, like a bird's hesitant song lost in the chill. Then came the chills, a delicate trembling of her small frame, and a glassy-eyed stare that spoke of an unseen discomfort, a fragile vulnerability. Olivia noticed it first. She pressed her palm gently to the child's forehead, her concern a sudden, soft cloud on her features. "I think she's burning up," Olivia whispered, her voice laced with worry, scooping Ava into her arms without a moment's hesitation, cradling her gently. "I'll stay with her tonight." Ethan stood at the door of the playroom, unsure, his brow furrowed with worry, a shadow of fear crossing his face. "Are you sure? You don't have to." "I want to," Olivia interrupted softly, her eyes meeting his with a quiet certainty that left no room for argument. "She needs someone close." For the next 8 hours, Olivia never left Ava's side. She was a silent sentinel, a comforting presence in the long, dark hours, her commitment unwavering. She kept a damp cloth on Ava's forehead, her touch light as a feather, soothing the feverish skin. She read softly between Ava's restless naps, her voice a gentle murmur, weaving familiar tales into the stillness of the night, a lullaby of reassurance. She sat awake, unmoving, through the darkest hours, listening to the slow, rhythmic sound of Ava's breathing, a constant assurance that fragile life continued. She didn't sleep, she didn't complain, she simply stayed, a quiet, unwavering pillar of care, her spirit unyielding. At 3:15 a.m., as Olivia leaned against the headboard, Ava's head nestled softly in her lap, her own exhaustion a quiet hum beneath her vigil, she noticed a small tray by the door. A mug of warm ginger tea sat there, steaming gently, its aroma a sweet, comforting cloud, next to a folded note. She reached for it, her fingers trembling slightly, her eyes already wet before she even unfolded the paper. "You stayed for her. Thank you." No signature. None needed. Olivia held the note to her chest, pressing it over her racing heart, and closed her eyes, 1,000 emotions flooding through her, like waves breaking on a silent shore. This small, unexpected gesture of gratitude, appearing in the quiet of the night, had sealed a wound in Ethan's silent heart, allowing a tender connection to surface, weaving into a deeper thread of understanding, tied to a meaning she hadn't fully grasped before. It was a simple act, yet it spoke volumes of a dawning, profound connection. The next morning, Ava's fever broke. Her little voice returned, hoarse but cheerful, like a fragile bird song after a storm, a quiet miracle. Olivia helped her brush her soft hair, tying it back with a bright blue ribbon, and made her a simple, soft breakfast. Ethan joined them at the table, quiet and thoughtful, his gaze often resting on Olivia with a new, unspoken depth, a silent gratitude. That afternoon, Olivia sat in the backyard alone, watching the bare trees sway in the cold breeze, feeling the strange, unfamiliar ache of something beautiful beginning to bloom within her. Her phone buzzed, a sudden jolt in the quiet air. A message appeared, crisp and stark against the warm winter light. "Miss Reed, we'd love to have you back. A full-time kindergarten teaching position has opened at Lakeside Elementary. Let us know by Monday." She stared at the screen, her heart a sudden flutter against her ribs, like a wild bird trapped. A job offer, a chance to return to the familiar rhythm of her calling, to the comforting structure of a stable career. A new beginning on a path she had always known. So why did her stomach twist with such a sharp, unfamiliar pain? Why did the image of Ava's sleepy eyes, Ethan's quiet, grateful presence, and the recent laughter that had filled the kitchen make her hesitate so profoundly, casting long shadows over her certainty? This house, once a grand, impersonal structure, a silent monument to what was lost, had transformed. It had become something more than mere shelter. It felt like a family, like a home she hadn't known she was missing until its warmth enveloped her. Every shared story, every small drawing, every quiet moment of understanding had woven new threads into the tapestry of her life, making the fabric stronger, yet more fragile to tear away. A deeper rift, like a crack in a village well, had begun to form within her, unsettling her quiet resolve. The phone buzzed, a sudden, jarring note in the still afternoon. Olivia, watching the bare trees sway in the cold breeze from the backyard, felt an unfamiliar longing within her, a budding awareness of a beauty taking root. The message on the screen, crisp and stark, held the weight of decision. "Miss Reed, we'd love to have you back. A full-time kindergarten teaching position has opened at Lakeside Elementary. Let us know by Monday." She stared at the words, her heart a sudden flutter against her ribs, like a bird caught between two open windows. A job offer, a chance to return to the familiar rhythm of her calling, to the comforting structure of a stable career. A new beginning on a path she had always known. So why did her stomach twist with such a sharp, unfamiliar pain? Why did the image of Ava's sleepy eyes, Ethan's grateful, silent presence, and the recent laughter that had filled the kitchen make her hesitate so profoundly, casting long shadows over her certainty? This house, once a grand, impersonal structure, a silent monument to what was lost, had transformed. It had become something more than mere shelter. It felt like a family, like a home she hadn't known she was missing until its warmth enveloped her. Every shared story, every small drawing, every moment of understanding had woven new threads into the tapestry of her life, making the fabric stronger, yet more fragile to tear away. Olivia retreated indoors, the weight of the choice pressing on her, heavy and unyielding. She sought calm solace in the living room, settling into a deep armchair by the window, the mellow light of the late afternoon painting the space in hues of amber. The job offer, a tangible piece of her old life, lay like a stone in her lap. How could she leave the tender rhythm she had found here, the subtle joy that bloomed in Ava's laughter, the deep, unspoken connection with Ethan? As her gaze drifted across the room, it fell upon Ava's small collection of art supplies, neatly arranged in a basket beside the fireplace. A new, curious impulse guided her fingers. She picked up a worn, ribbon-bound book Ava had made, its construction paper pages filled with bright, eager drawings. She turned the pages slowly, each one a testament to their shared days. Ava brushing cookie flour from Olivia's nose, captured in bright, joyful strokes. Ava asleep in Olivia's lap with a storybook open between them. Ava laughing in the snow while Ethan stood watching, smiling, his eyes always on Olivia. Then tucked loosely between two pages, a delicate parchment fluttered out. It was a sheet of music yellowed with age, its lines and notes penned in a graceful, flowing hand. The title, delicate and understated, read, "The Sunshine Song." And below it, a fainter, almost ghost-like inscription, nearly lost to time, composed by Ethan Vance. Olivia's breath hitched. Her fingers, trembling slightly, traced the elegant script. Ethan Vance, Ethan's late wife, the very melody she had sung to Ava 2 years ago. The brave song, the lullaby of enduring love that had brought comfort to a shattered child. Olivia had found it, purely by chance, in an old preschool songbook, drawn to its simple beauty and poignant lyrics. She had never known its origin, never imagined it held such a deep personal connection to this family, a thread of fate more intricate than she could have conceived. A wave of awe mixed with apprehension washed over her. Was this a sign, urging her to stay, or a burden, making her feel eternally inadequate to fill the shoes of the song's true creator? The thought of staying now felt heavier, bound by more than just affection. It was tied to a sacred trust. The job offer, once a clear path, now felt like a jarring dissonance against the soft harmony of this discovery. How could she return to a life where this connection, this profound intertwining of souls, did not exist? The weight of choice pressed on her, heavy and unyielding. Stay and risk wanting more than she was allowed to hope for, to step into a space that had belonged to another, or leave before the depths of her heart were laid bare, before the inevitable hurt of a temporary connection fully consumed her. She stood there, suspended between everything she had ever known and everything she had never expected to find. The heart stirring, once a tender ripple, now crashed against her, an undeniable tide. And in the hush of that late afternoon, one truth rang clear, sharp and piercing. This was no longer just a job, and Olivia's heart, once her own, was no longer hers alone, revealing a deeper rift within her, like a crack in a village well, exposing a longing she could no longer deny. Olivia stood by the vast window, her fingers tracing the rim of her lukewarm tea mug. Outside, the snow had begun to fall again, soft and silent, blanketing the world in an ethereal white. The house behind her was quiet, too quiet, a stillness that had once felt oppressive but now carried the profound ache of emptiness, a prelude to departure. She had made her decision. It had formed slowly within her, a fragile resolve shaped by the revelations of the previous day, a misguided attempt to protect a heart now irrevocably bound. That morning, she sat down with Ethan at the long kitchen table, its polished surface reflecting the pale winter light like a still pond. Ava was still sleeping upstairs, her fever completely gone, her dreams peaceful, untroubled by the quiet storm brewing below. Olivia folded her hands in her lap, her gaze fixed on the gleaming hardwood floor, unable to meet his eyes, unable to face the truth she carried. "I got the offer," she said gently, her voice barely above a whisper. Yet it felt impossibly loud in the hushed room, a fragile bell tolling. "The teaching job." Ethan looked at her, something unreadable flickering in his gray eyes, a momentary shadow passing across the still waters of his gaze. "And I'm going to take it." There was a long pause, stretched taut with unspoken words, a silence that hummed with quiet pain. Ethan exhaled slowly, a soft, almost imperceptible sound, his jaw tightening. "Is it what you want?" he asked, his voice calm, perhaps too calm, lacking any inflection, yet carrying a subtle, profound weight that settled heavily in the air. Olivia nodded, though her heart thudded painfully in her chest, a rapid, frantic beat against her ribs, betraying the fragile composure she tried to maintain. "It's what I was meant to do. Teaching it's where I belong." She still could not look at him, her gaze fixed on a distant point beyond the window, a quiet escape from the truth she knew her eyes would betray. "I see," he said, still calm, still quiet, but the hurt sat beneath his words like a deepening shadow, a silent understanding of her departure, of a loss he had perhaps begun to fear. She finally raised her eyes to meet his, and the raw emotion in their depths was a quiet plea, a desperate confession. This was never supposed to be permanent. I was only filling in for my sister. I was never meant to stay. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his posture a subtle barrier. Yet his gaze remained fixed on her. You were never temporary, Olivia. His voice was quiet, a statement of profound truth, unwavering and resonant. Her breath caught, a sharp intake of cold air, as his words pierced through her carefully constructed defenses. But I know I don't get to decide that, he added, softer now. The words a resigned sigh, a quiet acceptance of a truth he did not desire. Olivia stood, the lump rising in her throat making it almost impossible to speak, a physical manifestation of her unspoken pain. You and Ava, you've been incredible. This house, these days, they've meant more to me than I can ever say. He rose too, moving slowly, deliberately, his gaze fixed on her for a long, lingering moment, as if trying to memorize every line of her face, every nuance of her expression, to etch her presence into his memory. Then why leave? He asked again, the question soft, yet carrying the full weight of a profound yearning. She blinked, tears brimming, hot and sudden, spilling over her lids. Because I'm not her. I'm not Ava's mother. I'm not your wife. I was just someone passing through. The words were an attempt to define boundaries, to protect herself from a hope too grand, too painful to embrace. You were never just anything, he said, his voice laced with an urgency that pierced the calm, a desperate truth he needed her to hear. His gaze softened, a flicker of pain in his own eyes, as if he now understood the deeper fear that shadowed her resolve. But the words came too late, released into the space between them as she had already made her decision. Olivia stepped back, her hand fumbling for her bag, the simple act of physical escape. She walked out of the kitchen before her resolve could crack, before the tears could truly fall, leaving him in the quiet, empty space. That evening, she packed in silence, her movements precise, methodical, each item folded with an unspoken finality, a careful severance of ties. Her sister, recovered and looking pale but relieved, arrived to take over. They exchanged quiet hugs in the hallway, a sisterly embrace filled with shared history and unspoken understanding. Olivia smiled through the goodbyes, a faint, sad curve of her lips that didn't quite reach her eyes. She kissed Ava's forehead one last time, a tender brush of her lips against the child's soft skin as Ava stirred sleepily and whispered promises to write, promises that felt fragile and tenuous in the face of their parting. Then she left. The snow fell heavier now, a soft, muffling blanket that absorbed her footsteps as she walked to the grand iron gate, creating a hushed, insulated world around her. Her cab waited at the curb, its headlights cutting twin paths through the swirling white. She climbed inside, pulling the door shut with a soft click, refusing to look back at the house that no longer felt like just someone else's home, but a vital, aching part of her own heart. Just as the driver reached for the ignition, a voice, sharp and clear, cut through the muffling snow. Wait! Ava's nanny, now back and fully recovered, ran to the cab, her breath steaming in the cold air, a small brown box clutched in her hand. Mr. Vance wanted you to have this, she said, her voice a little breathless, pressing the box into Olivia's hands through the open window, a final, unexpected gesture. Olivia opened it in the back seat as the cab pulled away, the mansion's lights receding into the snowy distance, fading like a dream. Inside the box, nestled carefully in soft tissue paper, was a single item, a delicate wooden frame, its polished surface smooth beneath her trembling fingers. Behind the glass, preserved for eternity, was the letter, the very one she had written years ago on that long-forgotten day, for a child whose name she hadn't known. Her words, still simple, still childlike in their warmth, stared back at her in her own familiar handwriting. Even when someone we love is gone, they live here, every time we smile. And beneath it, a new line, inked in Ethan's elegant, distinctive script. A quiet, powerful addition, a testament to a truth she had tried to deny. To the woman who changed 2 lives with a few kind words, Olivia clutched the frame to her chest, her hands trembling, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, hot trails against her cold skin. The snow continued to fall, a blur of white outside the window, obscuring the world. She stared down at her own handwriting, her heart aching in places she had not known existed. A profound, tender pain that resonated with the silence of the cab. She had left to protect herself, to guard her heart from the inevitable hurt of a temporary connection. But what if leaving was the very thing that would break her? What she sought, a clear path, a simple resolution, was not what she found. Instead, a path that was meant to lead away revealed the unexpected truth of a home she was now leaving behind. Its quiet warmth a lingering, haunting ghost. A gentle reckoning had occurred, revealing a deeper truth than her departure. Olivia walked the familiar hallway of her new classroom, her heels tapping softly against the linoleum, a rhythmic, solitary sound that echoed the quiet within her. The laughter of children, though present in other rooms, seemed distant, muffled by closed doors. Crayons lay scattered across tables, vibrant splashes of color against the pale wood, and tiny voices buzzed with stories and secrets, a comforting symphony she knew so well. She smiled as she always did, a professional, practiced curve of her lips, but the warmth never quite reached her eyes, which often held a faraway gaze. Each day she poured herself into the work, a steady, unwavering commitment. She led storytime with grace, her voice a gentle current carrying young minds to distant lands. She gently wiped away tears, her touch soft, empathetic. She encouraged little hands to be brave and curious, to reach for knowledge, to explore the world with wide-eyed wonder. But in the still moments, during lunch breaks, when the bell rang and the room emptied, or in the profound hush after the last child had left, she felt it, a hollow space, the persistent absence. It wasn't the job she loved. Teaching was her calling, her purpose. It was the silence where Ava's laughter should have been. It was the coffee she poured for herself in the morning, a solitary ritual, without seeing Ethan's tired smile across the kitchen. It was the cold edge of a pillow that had once been warmed by belonging, by a shared life, now filled only with loneliness. She missed them. She missed him. A quiet longing, profound and insistent, settled deep in her heart, like a stone in a still pond. Then one Thursday afternoon, as the late afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows, casting long golden shadows across the empty classroom, her school secretary appeared in the doorway. She held a small package, wrapped in unassuming brown paper. "This came for you, Miss Reed," she said, her voice bright. Olivia's name was written in uneven crayon on the front, the letters clumsy but undeniably heartfelt, a child's earnest effort. Olivia sat at her desk, her heart pounding a soft, frantic drum against her ribs as she tore the brown paper carefully. Inside, nestled gently, was a handmade book. It was thick, crafted from construction paper bound with brightly colored ribbon. Glitter adorned the corners, sparkling faintly in the fading light, and stickers of stars, bears, and rainbows were scattered throughout, a child's joyous artwork. On the very first page, a drawing. Ava, unmistakable in her vibrant colors, holding Olivia's hand. Above them, scrawled in hesitant letters, were the words, "Me and Miss Sunshine." Olivia gasped softly, a small, choked sound. Each page was a memory lovingly rendered, Ava brushing cookie flour from Olivia's nose, captured in bright, joyful strokes. Ava asleep in Olivia's lap with a storybook open between them. Ava laughing in the snow while Ethan stood watching, smiling, his eyes always on Olivia. The final page was simple, yet spoke volumes. A heart drawn with a bold red crayon, and a message written in Ava's messy, unmistakable handwriting. "Come home, Miss Sunshine." Olivia pressed her hand to her chest, over her racing heart. Her throat tightened, a sudden, overwhelming emotion lodging there. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed, an impulsive, desperate need. One ring, two. No answer. Her hands shook as she tried again. Nothing. She stood up so quickly her chair fell backward with a loud clatter, a harsh sound in the quiet room. "I have to go," she told the startled secretary, grabbing her coat, her voice urgent, filled with a sudden, desperate clarity. "Family thing." "Everything okay?" the woman called after her, concern etched on her face. Olivia did not answer. She was already out the door. Outside, the wind had picked up, biting at her exposed skin. The air smelled of snow, a crisp, clean scent that filled her lungs. She flagged down a taxi, her movements quick, decisive. She climbed in and gave the address she had once typed into a rideshare app without knowing it would forever change the course of her life. The ride was long, interminable, each moment stretching like taffy, filled with the hum of the engine and the quiet storm of her thoughts. Her fingers clutched the handmade book in her lap, holding it tight as if it might disappear, taking with it the fragile hope it represented. Her mind raced with questions, doubts, but beneath them, a fierce, persistent hope refused to be extinguished. When the cab finally pulled up to the familiar iron gates, the sky was turning a deep bruised lavender. Lights glowed warm and inviting in the windows of the mansion, a beacon in the gathering dusk, welcoming her back. Her breath caught, a sharp, ragged sound. She paid the driver, her hands fumbling slightly with the money, stepped onto the path, and walked to the front door. She hesitated for only a moment, then knocked. For a beat, there was only silence, a vast, echoing quiet that seemed to hold its breath. Then the door opened. Warm light spilled onto the porch, painting the snow-dusted steps in gold. And there he was, Ethan. He stood framed by the doorway, his sweater sleeves rolled to his elbows, his expression unreadable as ever. Yet his eyes, those cool, gray, solemn eyes, softened the instant they saw her, transforming his face with a quiet, profound relief. "Olivia," he breathed like a prayer, a whisper on the cold air, a word laden with unspoken meaning. She did not speak. She could not. Then a small voice, bright and clear, rang out from behind him. "Miss Sunshine!" Ava darted forward, a tiny, joyful projectile, flinging herself into Olivia's arms before anyone could stop her, her small body a warm embrace. Olivia knelt, her own arms wrapping tightly around the child, her tears soaking into the little girl's coat. Ethan stepped closer, hesitant, a quiet reverence in his movements. Olivia looked up, her voice trembling, thick with emotion. "I got your book." He nodded, a slow, gentle movement, his eyes never leaving hers. "We made it together. Every night before bed, she'd ask if you were coming back." She blinked, trying to steady her heart, trying to find her voice amidst the rush of emotion. "And you did. You wondered." Ethan exhaled slowly, a deep, cleansing breath, a quiet release. "Every day." She stood, Ava still holding her hand. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a letter. Not a ring, not a grand, cinematic gesture, just a piece of paper, folded carefully. He handed it to her, his gaze unwavering, full of a quiet, profound hope. "This time," he said, his voice soft but clear, "it's from me." Olivia opened it, her hands shaking, her eyes blurring with unshed tears. The words, simple yet powerful, filled her vision. "Would you stay, not just for her, but for me too?" She looked up, eyes brimming, and nodded, tears finally flowing, a silent cascade of joy and relief. He dropped to one knee, not with a ring, but with both hands open, holding nothing but hope, a gesture of profound vulnerability and earnest plea. And Ava, still clinging to Olivia's arm, looked between them and giggled, a pure, bell-like sound. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" Olivia wrapped one arm around her and the other around Ethan, pulling both close, tears of happiness spilling onto their shoulders. "If you'll have me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The sky had already surrendered to nightfall when they stood there, clasped together in the golden quiet, the warmth of the home wrapping around them like a gentle embrace. No longer strangers, no longer broken pieces searching for a place, but a family born not of blood, but of kindness, of letters, of love in its simplest, most profound form. A tender dawn had broken, not a final answer, but a shared beginning. Healing, they knew, was incomplete, but it was now shared, like hands clasped in quiet understanding. A breath of peace settled over them, deep and true as the unspoken promise between them, for forever, resonated in the still night. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that hope can be found in the most surprising moments, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Heartwarming Love Story. We bring you stories that touch the soul, renew your belief in kindness, and highlight what's truly important in life.